Hey there, it's Adam Schmela with Integrated Consulting and Advisory Solutions. Thank you so much for investing your time, your energy, and your resources into our workflow solutions specifically built for the Redtail CRM. My goal in being with you through this video as well as the following videos is to help you and your firm understand how our workflows are written, understand some of the homework and action items that you and your firm are going to be responsible for doing so that you can customize our workflows to the way in which your firm delivers a phenomenal client experience. As I tell all advisors, unless your firm practiced and served clients and used the exact same pieces of technology and the exact same flows of client service, unless you did it exactly the same way that we did, there is going to be a certain level of heavy lifting that's going to be required on your end. As I'm fond of saying, this is kind of like getting a paint by numbers instead of a blank canvas as it pertains to a workflow system. So my goal is to show you the paint by numbers, tell you which colors that we've used in that paint by numbers, but ultimately it's going to be up to you to decide how you color that picture in and how you customize these workflows into the degree of detail that you take the workflows in running your firm. What I want to do in this first video is kind of set some expectations. Again, we know that workflows at its core tell an office who's responsible for doing what, when it needs to get done, and for which client. Now that applies on the front end from client acquisition and prospecting and new client onboarding all the way through client service, and even on the back end as far as transitioning clients, clients passing away, etc., as well as some client service workflows. And we'll get into the details and some of the workflow layout in the following videos. What I want to do is kind of give you some best practices to just kind of tuck into the back of your mind as you're going through this training process. So my first recommendation and theme is that workflows in an office that has not used workflows before are going to be as good as the weakest link, which is playing by the rules. So what I mean by that, and it's typically an advisor that is hesitant to embrace a new system like this. In order for a workflow to work, there is a certain amount of human element and human input that is required to have these work. And so it's important that all advisors and all team members in the firm understand what you're trying to accomplish and the benefit in using workflows. To the extent that someone doesn't play ball, it can make it difficult for a firm to see the significant benefits of workflows. So just know that that's going to be an important theme to keep in mind. The other best practice that I'd recommend is that you dedicate time each week in the first 90 days here to meet and discuss workflows. So as opposed to working in the practice, I would encourage you to set aside time to work on the practice, specifically around workflows and the customization. Now, what I also want to do, we'll get into workflows here in the Redtail CRM in just a minute, but one thing that I do want to recommend is that you go ahead and open up multiple different tabs. And so what I want to do first is demonstrate where workflows are. So workflows, the templates that you have that you invested in are going to be under Manage Your Account. And then if we go ahead and click on Workflow Templates, we're now going to see the list of all the workflow templates that are in your CRM. What I would recommend doing as you're using these on a day-to-day basis, if you're in Chrome, utilizing the Chrome browser on either a Mac or PC, what I'd recommend doing is going up to the tab, make a right click, and click on Duplicate. I typically recommend firms have at least 3 tabs of Redtail CRM open. And the far right tab, we always recommend to keep on the templates, because as you'll see, as you start working on these templates within a client record, or as the workflow is attached to a client record, we always want to make sure that we're tweaking and changing and customizing the workflow for our firm at the template level. And again, this will make more sense as we dive into it. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed and lost right now, that is okay. I will come back to all this in future videos. This little update that Redtail created over here is, for lack of a better word, kind of a waste. It doesn't serve any purpose. So it is just kind of there to show you the percentage of workflows that you have that are around categories. How our workflows work and the way in which we've created them are a couple of layers of an onion deep. So we'll start at the first layer here by the naming and overlay of a workflow, or overview of a workflow. So you'll see that our workflows are ordered in an alphanumeric order, and that's based off Redtail. So you'll notice that we have our appointment workflows, and then as we scroll down, we get into client service, and so on and so on. We have the name of the workflow here. We have the description. This description is meant to be as if you had a standard operating procedure written in a Word document or some other document in your office, so that anybody coming in off the street could read this workflow, read the description, and determine what this process would be used for. The target date is a very important number to realize, and I will come back to that in the specific video where we talk about the functionality of a workflow and how target dates play into that. Status, active is going to be important. Any active workflow that you see is also going to show up. If I click over into another tab and I pull up a sample client, and I decide to attach a workflow to a client, the only workflows that are going to show up as being able to be used are going to be active workflows. What I would recommend doing is if you see and get through workflows at the end of this process that you just know you are never going to use, I recommend doing two things. Number one, I recommend that you go in here and edit the workflow. And I would encourage you to do something called ZZ that workflow. What I mean by that is we rename the workflow, we put a ZZ in the front of it, space, and then we make it inactive. By doing that, you're going to see it do two things. Number one, it's going to rename it. And now if I refresh this tab, Redtail will automatically punt that workflow all the way to the bottom. And number two is when I want to, if I wanted to attach this workflow to a specific client, let's click on Homer Simpson here. And I want to attach this workflow to Homer Simpson. You'll notice that if I scroll to the very bottom, that workflow does not show up. So I would encourage you, number one, do not delete any of our templates that we put into your database because there is no Control Z, there is no undo button in workflow. So if you delete any of the templates, any of these templates, there is no way to get them back. So make sure that you don't delete workflows. We want you to make them inactive so that they don't show up, as well as rename them and quote ZZ them. That will turn into a verb in your workflow process, and just punt that workflow all the way down to the bottom. Now, the last thing, or the last two columns that you'll see, simply the number of steps, that's more of an FYI, as well as the category. Now, the category in your CRM is most likely blank because you utilize different categories, or most likely utilize different categories than what we do in our firm. While every firm has different categories, I would encourage your firm to incorporate one category that we have learned and has served us very, very well, and that is one that we call cashiering. So you'll see that we have 7 different workflows that have cashiering. Cashiering is an important category because it typically encompasses one of the most important action items in an advisory firm, and that's money going in or out of a client account. And so in one of the later videos where we start talking about the reporting features and the reporting capability around workflows, being able to filter through all the open workflows that you have in your practice and just focus on the very important ones that deal with money going in or out of a client's account, and being able to filter through that and just see those workflows, all of those workflows, because they're limited, as we see, there's 7 different templates that are labeled cashiering. Using the reporting function and searching and filtering through just workflows that are open that have the category of cashiering attached to them will allow you to sift through all the noise and just see those very important workflows. So that's one best practice that I would recommend doing, is regardless of what your categories, you can see what we have by default. We have appointment workflows, cashiering, account service, customer service, et cetera, et cetera. Regardless of how you do it, you're free to go ahead and assign your own categories based off of the naming of our workflow templates. If you don't utilize categories right now, you are more than welcome to benchmark off of ours. And again, I can kind of scroll through here so that you can get an idea as to what they are. I'll pause here because I will get from fee-only RIAs that we don't do insurance, so we don't need insurance workflows. You will find in your overall service of clients, if you do deliver comprehensive financial planning to clients, and part of that financial planning is helping them implement life insurance, whether you're working with an agent locally or you're using a general agent, you're referring them to an online-only resource like a Select Quote or something like that, you can still track that process at an arm's length utilizing this workflow. Or as we get towards the bottom, you're also going to see that we have a section of referral workflows. for multiple different COIs or multiple different referral partners that you would use in your practice. So again, go ahead and feel free to benchmark our categories for the workflows that you have in your CRM, and go ahead and take that. That's going to be your first piece of homework, is to go ahead and assign categories to the workflow templates. Our next video is going to get into the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of how workflows work.